Football moves incredibly quick. 1 second you might be celebrating an incredible hate watch on a club that you just can't stand, and then the next thing you know, that same club might be on top of the world, making football feel like a drag to watch. Well, no more is this true than with Real Madrid at the moment. Yes, the perennial winners of World Football, Real Madrid, have looked to turn a new leaf, and it seems like they're back on their way to making it to the summit of world football. I don't hate them personally, but there's gonna be a ton of people that do. And if you clicked on the video, you either hate them or you love them, so you have to be part of the camp in one way or another. This club as a whole needs no introduction to their accolades, but over the course of last season, they look like a shadow of what they're known to be. Carlo Ancelotti's final year with Madrid left so much to be desired, especially considering the fact that it seemed like the club was destined to just be anyone that was in their way. A team that had just won the Champions League with Vini Jr., Bellingham, Rodrigo, Courtois, Camavinga, and literally so many other players, added Kylian Mbappe, and shades of the 2017 Golden State Warriors were unavoidable. And then Madrid went on to only win the UEFA Super Cup, shown levels in 4 consecutive games against Barca, and as a whole looked nowhere near the level that everyone expected from them when it mattered the most. Essentially, for Real Madrid standards, last season was a complete embarrassment, and because of this, things needed to change. It was clear that Ancelotti was not going to be the guy to take this team and this insane squad to the promised land, so because of that, before last season ended, it was made public that that was going to be Ancelotti's last season in charge, and in his place would come former Real Madrid icon Xabi Alonso. Alonso quickly became one of the hottest managerial prospects in the world thanks to his time with Bayer Leverkusen, where he turned them into a near indestructible side. Known for his ability to generate aggressive, dominant, and attacking football, Fiorentino Perez knew that Alonso was going to be the man that the squad would benefit the most from having at the helm. And boy, has Xabi Alonso done an insane job of turning things around this season. And real quick boost before getting into Real Madrid's good season so far, if you're enjoying the video, make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to 2K, we're so close. It takes a couple seconds to subscribe and I would greatly appreciate it. But with that being said, for the first time ever on the channel, let's glaze Real Madrid a little bit. So coming off of last season specifically, aside from maybe being Manchester United's manager, the Real Madrid seat was probably the one with the most amount of eyes, considering Alonso was tasked to make a galactical team function. Many questions would arise, such as what formation he would even play, if he'd use the same Rodrigo, Vini, and Mbappe front three, and generally if his style of play would translate to a team of this caliber. So with that, Real Madrid would get to work instantly to make sure that Xabi Alonso was set up for success, and of course this would begin with the transfer market. Luka Modric and Lucas Vazquez had been aged out of the squad and saw themselves departing the club last summer. And all things considered, Los Blancos would have a pretty good summer transfer window, as they'd bring in Trent from Liverpool for 10 million euros, Carreras from Benfica for 50 million euros, Masantuano from River for 45 million euros, and Dean Huijsen from Bournemouth for 62 million euros. Defensive depth and even quality was a major issue for the club last season, and as a result they invested heavily into these areas. They could have done with maybe selling an attacker and using that to try and properly replace the hole that the midfield has had since Cruz retired, but nonetheless Real Madrid were going into the season with a stacked team once again, and now it was time to see what Xabi Alonso could do. And the first test, at least in the eyes of the media, for Alonso would come in the Club World Cup in the good old US of A. This slightly hyped preseason tournament would give everyone a chance to see if Alonso's tactics could theoretically work with this team. Going into this tournament, Alonso would be without the Ninja Turtle, who was nursing a little bit of an injury, but to his luck, young striker Gonzalo Garcia would step up to the plate. All things considered, Madrid would get past the group stage with ease. The first game did see them shockingly draw to a good Al Hilal team, who on the day had Madrid's number, and after that game specifically, there was a narrative that maybe Alonso was just going to be cooked from day one and that there was no salvaging this team. They handled business very convincingly moving forward, and interestingly enough, in the next 2 games, we would see experimentation from Xabi Alonso to see what worked best, as he tried out 3 different formations with 3 different personnel. And one key thing to keep in mind as Madrid grew in this tournament and kept getting better and better was how much Arda Güler was participating in every single match. But in the round of 16, Real Madrid would get the better of Juventus in a pretty stale match, and then in the quarterfinals they would kill Borussia Dortmund early in the game. But the biggest blip in the end of the tournament for Madrid would be against PSG, where they got absolutely dogged out 4-0 by the Champions League champion. In fairness, Rudiger at this point, who was a walking liability, was the one who was tasked to do the job at the back, and he was playing like he had CTE the entire match. But with the tournament over, now came the important competitions. A few key takeaways was firstly that Alonso wasn't afraid to make decisions from a personnel standpoint. He was going to put the interests of the team came first, so subbing off his stars wasn't a problem. Secondly, it was clear that Arda Güler was going to be a key piece for the attack. Last season, there was a massive lack of creativity in the squad, all while Güler rotted away on the bench or was played out of position. Alonso was looking to tap into that creativity well. And lastly, if Madrid didn't have their best defensive unit out there, they'd be open to getting killed. And a little bit of a note as well was the fact that they would be without Jude Bellingham until late September, as he was recovering from a shoulder injury that needed surgery. With all that being said, now it's time for La Liga. So Real Madrid would get their season kicked off by hosting Osasuna at the Bernabeu, and to be honest, that first game left a lot to be desired from the squad. As a whole, they looked lethargic and lacked any cutting edge to make a difference. So you expect Real Madrid to dominate the ball against Osasuna at home, but they hardly made any of their 76% possession count. It would be an Mbappe penalty at the 51st minute that would be the difference, which at least saw the Frenchman continue his goal scoring prowess. And on the bright side, Madrid had definitely struggled with Huijsen and Carreras, but the rest of the team just needed to click. And for the most part, click is exactly what the squad would do, as they would go on to win their next 6 games. They did have a couple of close calls, including a narrow 2-1 win over Mallorca, where the only 2 goals for them came within a minute of each other, but nonetheless the team was trending well. Madrid was finally starting to click, and a large part of this was how well Güler was finally starting to connect with Mbappe. Los Blancos' run would come to a screeching halt though in the Madrid derby, where Atletico put belt to ass. While at first this match felt like it was going to be a shootout, as Real responded well to an early Atleti goal thanks to brilliance from Güler, Mbappe and Vini, over the course of the match Real just capitulated. Couldn't create anything going forward as Atleti set up very rigidly in the back, and multiple defensive mistakes gave Atleti the path to kill them. 5-2 pounding felt like a big stain in the season, and in this match Real Madrid were held to just under 1 expected goal for the first time all season. So it did kind of feel like an outlier performance, but nonetheless they needed to bounce back. And unfortunately for Cairo Almaty, they would face the wrath as the Kazakhstani club would suffer an Mbappe hat-trick and a 5-0 loss that was a cakewalk for Madrid. Following this performance, Madrid would host a good Villarreal side who to that point had found themselves hanging out with the big dogs at the top of the table. So given that Cairo was always going to be a cakewalk, Villarreal was the first opportunity to see if they were really going to be able to bounce back after the Atleti game. Safe to say they shut up a lot of haters that day because they really just killed Villarreal in so many different ways. Vini on the day would register a brace which included a penalty, and generally he looked a lot better than usual. The side would hold 70% possession, which was actually more than against Kairat, and they even generated more expected goals than against Kairat. Safe to say that Alonso had instilled a better mentality into the squad, as more than likely that Atletico result last year would have bled it straight into a slump. Madrid would continue to ball out after the Villarreal game. So on match day 10, a healthy Madrid would host Barcelona, and even though Barca were a bit depleted, this felt like a statement victory. After all, like I mentioned last season, Barcelona swept them. So on the day when Madrid's midfield bossed around Barcelona's, when Tchouaméni was a one-man wrecking ball, and when their backline snuffed out almost everything from Barca, the club and Alonso had shown how much they had progressed from the year before. Despite having just 32% possession, Madrid generated 3.6 expected goals and held Barca to 1. And then they followed this up with a 4-0 pounding of Valencia, where Mbappe recorded a brace, and all of a sudden any doubts that crept up after the Atleti game had been put to bed. That was until they faced the Liverpool side that on paper they were expected to beat. The Liverpool-Madrid game would be at Anfield, which of course is a tough place to play, but the expectation was that a red-hot Madrid would get the better of a Liverpool side that was teetering on the ropes. But instead we got a repeat of last year, where that Liverpool midfield made it impossible for Madrid to create anything, and where Madrid's wingers were just shut down on the day. So a 1-0 loss to Liverpool would end another short win streak for Madrid, but if you ask me, this is probably going to prove to be just like the Atletico game, where it doesn't just stop them outright. In my opinion, they're probably going to continue to go on good runs of form, which is going to help them keep that top spot in La Liga. And why do I think that? Well, it has to be because of the man in charge. I'm not going to pretend that Xabi Alonso is all of a sudden the best manager in the world and he's going to lead this Real Madrid team to record-breaking numbers, but I think he's more than capable of doing a very good job with this team, and I think the progress that he's made cannot be ignored. He's literally just making this Galactico team function as they should, and we're already seeing the result. Outright, he's already a much more disciplined manager than Carlo Ancelotti was. By player accounts, we know that he is just simply demanding more from these players. Carlo Ancelotti in his last season was potentially too loose with the squad, and I think this reflected in a lot of performances. This year, there's a lot more of a team spirit, more accountability, and more willingness to work for the team. On top of that, Alonso has a clear vision of what he wants his players to do. And when the players and the coach all have a clear understanding of what is expected on a football pitch, that just makes everything function a whole lot better. On top of that, generally it's been a lot more easier for Real Madrid to be dominant. They're currently outperforming their expected goals at this point by almost 10. By this point last season, they had accumulated 29.8 expected goals, whereas this year they have accumulated 37.1. It is clear clear that they are generating more chances. Again, last year there was an issue with that creativity and creating chances for Mbappe in that front line. This year, not so much. That takes us to the personnel, right? Who's behind all this creativity? Who else but Arda Güler? I'm just gonna say it outright, Alonso has unlocked this demon. We all knew this guy had potential, but Xabi Alonso is literally just playing him in his position, and we're already seeing the outcome of what happens when you do that. And then you have Mbappe up top, who's just operating insanely. It seems like he's unlocking new form thanks to the system that Alonso has him playing in. In the back, you have Carreras, who's been an unsung hero. He's making that left hand flank work, putting in the defensive shifts. I think over the course of the season, he's probably not going to get the plaudits that he deserves, but he's been very key to helping this team function as well. And then Vini Jr., despite having his problems with Xabi Alonso, he doesn't like getting subbed off. He isn't the same Vini that we saw 2 seasons ago tear up the Champions League, but he's still being very effective. And I think Xabi Alonso, the way that he is at least utilizing him, has been good for the overall flow of the squad. So Alonso's a lot better tactically than Xabi Alonso, and he's making this team just function, right? He's using players where they're supposed to be. He has a team playing good attacking football. They're actually possessing a lot of the ball in most of these games. Again, I don't think this is going to be some insane record-breaking season from Real Madrid, but Xabi Alonso literally just has these guys back on track to being where they were at before.